All right, let's get rocking. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Joe Ignace, the host of The Knowledge Gap. We're here with Zack Ballinger today. Say what's up, Zack.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, we're so excited to interview Zack today. You know, our podcast is all about how to maximize your college experience because there's a big knowledge gap between what you learn in school and what it takes to have success in your 20s. And we're going to be talking about one of the most essential skills that you will never, ever be taught in a classroom or on a college campus. That is the most crucial thing if you ever want to be successful or do something big in your life. And that is actually going to be networking. So this podcast episode is about the power of networking. You're going to want to listen to this entire episode because at the end, Zack has been giving his top tips for networking while you're in college. Because what most people don't realize is that college is the best networking opportunity that you'll have your entire life. And if you maximize it, then you will have connections and you can get in touch with almost anyone, anywhere across the whole planet, across the whole country for that moment where you figure out what you maybe want to do or need that connection to get started. Because there's this moment where you network with someone and they're going to give you all of these connections that you never even thought possible. In fact, in this little prep here with Zack, he's going to send me some links and some things for podcasting where I'm going to get connected in a lot of great ways. And so he's that for me. So we appreciate that. Now, if you never met Zack, I met him about 5 or 6 years ago in college. He came to campus and he was a motivational speaker at that time. And he was talking about how to interview well. And this is just after I had failed at interviewing like 8 times for student organizations. So it's perfect timing. And he taught me a lot. He taught me how to get in there and sell someone on yourself, which I think, again, is a skill that is not really talked about in school. He's got a couple books out right now, How Not to Be a Zombie and Find Your Career Path. He's got The Hot Seat, which I've got that book, read that one. Also incredible. He's done a TEDx, motivational speech in California and in Boston. So this man is on fire. He's been on different news channels, just interviewing him on how to find your career path. And he's going to be specifically talking about how to network, into your passion, right? Which is the most important thing. Because remember, one of the reasons that this podcast started is most people, 80% plus, hate their job their entire life. I don't want you to go through hating your job your entire life. I'd like for you to find something that when you get out of bed, you're excited to be there and go do that kind of stuff. So say what's up, Zack. Welcome. Thank you. We're so glad that you're here.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. I appreciate the podcast and your mission, and let's go for it.
Let's go for it. So just to, introduce yourself to everyone, like give us a little origin story. I know that you went to the University of Tennessee. Is that correct?
Yes, I went to the University of Tennessee several years ago. I went into the field of marketing and business administration. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And when I graduated college, I still had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I just kind of stumbled amongst jobs, got into pharmaceutical sales, did really well. But when you look at life and how short it is, I was diagnosed actually with Meniere's disease. And what Meniere's disease does, it takes your hearing. And I started becoming really stressed. That stress started to impact my health. And so I knew I needed to make a change and change to a career that I actually loved. And that's how I got here today.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. I'm so glad that you have gotten that under control a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. So how did you figure out what you wanted to do? And if you could, elaborate a little bit more on that part of the journey and specifically, how you kind of came to these books and ideas and what drives you?
Yeah, one of the things I noticed in high school and colleges, and you hit it on the first of the show, we're not really taught the basics. So when we go to school, what we really want is a good income, a good career. And that's the point of school when you think about it, to be able to support your family. You wanted to go into a career, but we're not really taught that. And so for me, I never really spent a lot of time on career development. I didn't really know my strengths. So if somebody said, well, what are you good at? What skills can you bring to the table? What problem do you want to solve? I never really spent a lot of time answering those questions or asking my peers or asking mentors what I'm good at. There was a common theme all along throughout my life is that I enjoy presenting. I had a passion for teaching, and I love to help people. And so that doesn't necessarily mean I need to be a high school teacher or college professor, but you can take those skills, and if you can translate them to a career, that's where your passion aligns with your vision to make your life what it is. And that's kind of what led me to the speaking, being an author and a podcast host today is through identifying my strengths and my abilities and talents and lighting them up in the private sector.
Love that. Absolutely right. And I think, everyone's passion question is going to be obviously way different. I think everyone tries to fit into like a box, right, with their major. And then they struggle with, oh, I've got to go this route because I'm an accounting major. And I remember everyone in my classes, raising their hand to go be a CPA and fit into this mold that may or may not fit them, or maybe they might be the best accountants of all time. I don't know. And I'm not, judging people who are accountants. That's a great career, to make money or whatever. But I know that the stats are just so high where people just don't enjoy it. They're doing it for money instead of doing it for a mission or purpose, and I think that's great. If you never sat down and thought about your strengths and weaknesses and what you're good at, what you're not good at, you should do that. You should sit there and think about what are you good at? What do you not like, So tell us a little bit about, your TED Talks, like some of the things that you talk about that seems to hit students really well. Some of the most interesting or impactful things that you've sort of talked about or heard, some feedback on.
Yeah, I think from my TED Talk, or my original one at the Oracle Center, most people like when I started comparing your analogy about how short your life is. And I gave the analogy, if you were to measure your life in a stone, the world's about 4.5 billion years old. So, the analogy of the rock, and if you look at your life and how short it is, the world's about 4.5 billion years old. And if I were to measure that in a landscape of the Pacific Ocean, someone that might have passed away at a really tragic age, 9, 10, 11, you get a little pebble and you get to throw that and there's not really a ripple effect. And then, if you live to be about 40 or 50, you throw that rock, it gets a little bit bigger into the ocean. It still doesn't really make a ripple effect. And then I think about somebody like my grandmother who lived to be 91 years old. She maxed out her life. And the average lifespan in North America between a female and a male is 77 years old to 78 years old. And so she's maxed out that. She had the biggest rock and she threw it in the Pacific Ocean and there's still no ripple effect. Well, what's the point of this? The point is it's not about the size of your rock. It's what you do with your rock. In other words, it's not about how long you have. It's what you do with the time you have on Earth. And if you start really thinking about your life and realizing that it's a very short moment in time, we need to like what we do in our career. We need to love it. We need to embrace it. And so you spend all this time, 1/3 of your life working away. And the last thing you want to do is come to retirement and say, wow, for 40 years, I was absolutely miserable, but I get another 10 to live it out. And that's what we're trying to change. That's the biggest thing that I think people take away from the talk is realizing, wow, we don't have long on this. So let's try to figure out something that we actually enjoy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a little caveat to this, because when we want to hit our dreams, I feel like what people kind of struggle with, and you probably agree, is there's some certain skills that you're going to have to develop to reach whatever your passion is, right? And to be honest, right? And I'd love to hear a story on this, Zach. Sometimes you've got to do stuff you don't like, though, to get the skill to then do what you do love. There's a start, there's a learning curve, right? Of pushing through, whether it's fear or just poor skills or misunderstanding and that big knowledge gap, right? That's what we're trying to close. Like, what was it for you that was like the hardest part that maybe wasn't the most enjoyable? Because I don't want people to think it's like, hey, when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and you don't have any skills, it's like, you might have to do something hard, to set yourself apart in order to do what you need to do.
No, that's a great question. I think it applies to all of us. For me, I was trying to get into pharmaceutical sales at the time, which is a very difficult industry to get into. So I had to go out and prove myself in a business to business sales experience job. I didn't like the job, to be honest with you. I hated it, actually. But I knew I needed to put my time in to get to my greater goal. And so what I did was I worked that job for a year. I was able to demonstrate business to business sales experience. I had a very high sales number. I was able to achieve success. And then I was able to network and get into pharmaceutical sales through that effort. But during that whole year, it was pretty much, I didn't enjoy it, but I was developing my skills. I was developing communication skills. I was developing sales skills. I was developing interpersonal skills, how to manage a team. So all this type of things that you may not like to do in the beginning. I'll give you another quick example. I met Emily at the University of Tennessee. She wanted to work at Walt Disney World as a character. She had no luck getting in. She was networking and she just couldn't get her foot in the door. Well, what she did was she decided to take an entry-level job in a concession stand at Walt Disney World. Guess what? She showed up. She worked hard for 2 years. She made sure everything was clean. She was on time. She took extra shifts. She made a lot, liked it for 2 years. But guess what she's doing now, Joe? She's a Disney character and she absolutely loves it. So don't let that deter you from your greater dream.
I love that. Absolutely right. So you've got to push through these barriers sometimes to go make stuff happen. And I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with, especially Gen Z, right? So all college students right now, is showing up, because you're so used to the technology, the online applications, the Zooms and all this kind of thing. But if you literally just go show up, things can happen, and I love what you're talking about, those skills, because I think if you're a young person, well, I'd say almost generally across the culture of the United States, is some people sort of have this negative stereotype of salespeople or sales skills. And people don't realize is that you don't have to be like that, right? You can sell how you want. You can decide how you want to do stuff. And usually the best salespeople are the most relatable, likable, and funny, and the skill, if you can sell, you can kind of do anything you want. You
Absolutely.
can make doing anything.
And you look at it like you're in a sales position, you're trying to help your customer. If you're helping them trying to solve a problem, it becomes different than what you typically, like your stereotypical, what you think of a used car salesman. It's much different than that. It's you're trying to help your end user find a solution to their problem.
Yeah. And I almost think the point of doing a sales job is so you don't become a bad salesperson, whatever you're doing, what you're doing, because you put yourself in a place where you fail and mess up and you can see people's reactions. And then if you get good at it, you can see someone sell to you and how poor they are at it and how you don't want to buy from them. Right. And it's such a crucial thing if you want to open up what you can do, because most people, again, they don't learn that skill.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your, networking story here. So obviously, you were doing pharmaceutical sales, you built those skills, and how did networking play into getting to where you're at, where you get to love what you're doing, podcasting, speaking? Walk us through that.
Yeah. What I think's really helped me in my career, every job, and that sounds so cliche, but being in pharmaceutical sales, it taught me the scientific knowledge. It taught me how to communicate with intelligent people. It taught me really difficult things because it's obviously not an easy job. So there was multiple facets. I learned to be a great presenter, because guess what? In sales, you're obviously presenting to the entire office when you're talking about your product. So it made me a much more effective communicator. The way I was able to get into it, I would have not gotten into pharmaceutical sales without networking. 90% of jobs out there are usually gained through a connection that you have. So keep that in mind. And I didn't listen to my professors. I didn't listen to people in college. I thought I could do it on my own. I thought I was smart enough to do it. And then finally, I realized this networking thing works. And what happened was it was a series of events. I started working out with a guy. He introduced me to his brother. I started gaining a relationship with him. He eventually introduced me somebody from that pharmaceutical company that had an opening. I talked to the partner. I built a relationship with her. I had references for my part-time jobs at college, so they were able to validate my work ethic. So I had all these people working for me and helping me get the job. And before I even get to the hire manager, she says, "Wow, you come highly recommended." And so think about all the work that I did behind the scenes, networking and engaging in partners and people from the organization. And that's exactly, I feel, how I got my very first start into pharmaceuticals, and it really propelled my career where I am today.
Absolutely right. So that networking is crazy. My wife and I recently invested in a property and made it into an Airbnb. And that happened just because I knew a guy. And he basically was like, "Oh, here's how you do it. I make a bunch of money a year from this in Nashville. You could do it in Knoxville," and things like that. And I think having a lot of people say good things about you is really important too, because all of the work that you're doing now does matter for your future. I think a lot of people sort of like, "Oh, this job at wherever doesn't matter." But when someone's calling and asking about you, you want them to be saying good things about you. So let's dive a little bit deeper into networking. Okay, so you had all these people back you up, and there's a lot of things you're doing behind the scenes. Could you go into exactly what you did behind the scenes to get that first big job?
Yeah, I think what happens for a lot of students, and I was the same way, is when I think of networking, I think, oh, so does that mean I call Joe and ask him for a job? And that's not networking. Networking is a two-way street. You have to build credibility behind your brand, and you have to care about their career too. If you make it a one-way street, they're less likely to help you. And think about it, Joe, if you call me out of the blue and say, hey, do you mind to recommend me for this company, but I don't know you from Adam, I'm not going to put somebody's name on the line of my reputation. So networking is a lot of work. It's building those relationships. It's having conversations. So the way I did it when my workout partner started talking, I shared with him over 2 months why I wanted to get into pharmaceuticals, why I wanted that was a career for me, what I was doing to get into it. And then I would also ask him about his career. He wanted to be an insurance broker. So we would talk about that. I would try to provide tips. He would give me tips. And eventually he trusted me enough to introduce me to his brother that worked at the pharmaceutical company. And he gave me a great recommendation. And then I created a relationship with him. I didn't just ask him, did you have any openings? I said, hey, what's it like, at your company? What do you love about it? What's some of the challenges? We began building that relationship where he felt comfortable enough saying, hey, Zach's a great guy, Tina. He might make a really good partner for you. You should talk to him. And so those doors kept opening. And then the last kind of engagement when I talked to Tina, because I knew she was one step away from the hiring manager. The last thing I want to do is call Tina and say, hey, would you recommend me for this job? No, have a conversation, catch Tina, maybe take her to a coffee, meet her outside the office and say, and the first thing I asked Tina, I said, what do you like about your job? What are some of your challenges? What could a partner do to help you in your career? What do you want to do in 5 years? What assets and skills do you need to make you helpful? And then I made it about her. I wanted to advance her career. Guess what? If she sees that intent that I'm trying to help her build that relationship, she's obviously going to recommend the hire manager say, this guy's going to work hard for me. He's got my back. He's going to be a collaborator. He's all these things that I've said I wanted. And boom, you almost have the job. Now you obviously have to show up and interview and answer the questions, but networking really is going to decide, I think, if you're going to get the job before you even show up.
Yeah, absolutely. So like at our company, Elevate Wellness, we hired a young lady. Well, yeah, so a lady who's one of our appointment setters, and she used to work at this, supplement company. And, that was sort of our top of our list because she worked there and she said it was really good. And then one of our partners had actually sold their supplements before, right? So we used this networking and they were the first people to really get back to us because of that connection. And because of that connection, it's creating this cool partnership in the service to, further both goals because everybody wins. And I think that's an important thing if you are taking notes or checking this out to learn from this, is that you want to make networking a mutualistic relationship. And mutualistic just really means that you're adding value to both. Everybody wins. That's really what it is. And good salespeople and good leaders and good company owners, they're good at making the other person win when they're winning too, right? Where you're going to struggle or not get what you want is when you are winning and they're not. They're giving extra. And the way this was described to me from a mentor is it's like, imagine everyone has an emotional piggy bank. So let's say Zach's got an emotional piggy bank. And every time I do something for Zach that helps him, then I'm depositing a little coin. And every time I ask for help, I'm withdrawing, and you can't withdraw, into the red or the negative, right? So there has to be all these coins to withdraw in the future. Usually people are happy to do it if you put a lot of coins in the piggy bank. So kind of think of it that way. So everyone's got a sort of meter. If you're asking all the time for something and never giving, they're just at some point going to be like, well, this person's just using me, right? You never want to get that. So I think that's really, really important.
Great example. Absolutely.
Perfect. Let's keep beating the dead horse here on networking, right? So you got 2 books, and one of the hardest things to do to make a book successful is really finding the right publisher. Because a lot of these huge, big publisher companies, right? They sort of like, well, you want us or don't. And one of the ways that you can leverage your book to the best publisher that has the best resources, that it's going to give you the best deal that's beneficial for you and them, can be networking. I'm just curious, how did you network into, getting those books published? Where did you go? Why? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unless you're Oprah or Michael Jordan or somebody like that's got a name, you're probably not going to be a millionaire off selling books. And so if they make a book, obviously a huge publisher is going to jump right on it, take care of all their networking and media publications, communications, all that. Well, if you've written a book yourself, one of the things I recommend, and you can explore publishers, but is to self-publish. And what networking can help you do is, number one, you get you a great graphic design person in place. So you get a logo, you get your book title looking slick, fills that mission that you're trying to accomplish and helping people with your book. And number two, you get a great editor. I'm not the best at grammar or spelling, so I definitely get a good editor in place. A lot of people don't know this, but you also can't just type in a 100-page Word document and submit that. You have to put it into book format. So you have to find somebody of your team. So I always tell people when they're self-publishing and creating a great book, get a team around you, a support team that helps you, that can invest invest in your book to make it the most ultimate success. The ultimate success of you selling a book is not a publisher. It's you networking and selling why that book can help somebody. So if you can even get a publisher, they're going to require you to do some work on the back end. It's going to be social media, advertisements. It's going to be connecting to followers. It may even be writing blogs, or you're submitting articles to news stations. You're beating down the doors to try to get some PR to get your book out there. You're focusing on your target market. So if you, obviously for this podcast, if you were writing a book for college students, you wouldn't want to be pasting that all over to Facebook, because most college students now are not on Facebook. They're on different types of social media platforms. So networking to sell your book is probably the main thing that's going to make your book successful. People just don't realize that. They think you can write a book, you sit back, you let the publisher do everything. You're not going to be very successful. And to get your idea out there, it's going to have to be a lot of your networking. For example, just some of the colleges that I've spoken to and have relationships with, they promoted my book on their own college site. So they might promote it on their Instagram. Now, if you just email somebody out of the blue and say, hey, do you mind to advertise my book on your college website without knowing that person, how likely is that going to happen? It's not going to happen. So this is the power of the networking that's going to help you get your book out there and really make it a success.
Absolutely. And after this podcast, I'm going to be networking with you because I'm curious who your people are. So power of networking, again, it will get you places that you didn't think possible. It's going to be this connection, this recommendation. If you know a person, like think about it in your own friendships, if you're in college, right? If you know a friend of a friend, how many people have made new friends from a friend of a friend, right? And that's essentially what networking is. And when you're doing it with professionals, you just want to do it in a way that's really professional. Offer to take your professors out to coffee, do something like that where you're doing something for them where they'll want to spend time with you, because it's usually that first initial investment, whether it's a cup of coffee for $5 or whatever else. When you're talking with someone, it just goes a long way in warming up the relationship. And then after that, they'll want to do stuff for you for free because they'll see that you're different than everyone else. So I think one of the biggest mistakes college students make, and I'm sure you'll talk about this in your tips, is they're too transactional. They want to go get it, they want to go get it, and they want to go get it, and then they never want to have to do work ever again. And it's instant gratification, I think, that causes students to do that, because you're so used to ordering groceries from Instacart, ordering food from Grubhub, Amazon straight to your door, all this stuff. We're used to instant gratification, because that's what people buy, but that's not how relationships work, right? And if you want to get further, relationships are going to be the way to do it. So what are some other mistakes that you think most college students make? After that, I'm just so curious about what would be your top few tips for a college student on how to network and maximize their college experience?
Yeah, the biggest things that I think college students, some of the mistakes that happen is there's not enough investment in themselves. So you get into college, you're a freshman, and you're trying to pick your major. You have no idea what this means. You said something about accounting, when you're talking to who wants to be a CPA and everybody raises their hands that they want to be a CPA. I would even challenge, and I'd love to get up in front of the room. Okay, so what exactly is accounting? How many different jobs out there in accounting? What will you be doing day to day? What will you actually be doing to your spreadsheets? What problem are you going to solve? When you start asking these questions, they don't know. They've just heard accounting their whole life. Most of us, there's 821 career pathways in North America. Most of us can probably name 13. If we don't know all these career pathways out there, then how do we know that there might be a career out there for us and our particular skill set? So that's really important. I think mistakes college students make nowadays is they're always on their, with Instagram, Snapchat. That's great. It's taught you to be a great creator. But what we fail to do is communicate. And one of the best ways to relate with people is actually having a conversation face to face. And we've taken all that out. I'm guilty of it too, because I'm on social media. It's a lot easier to text somebody. It's a lot easier to keep that communication up. But studies will show that face-to-face communication is the most powerful asset. And I think too many students have stopped communicating with people. They're not that great about conversation, and that hurts them when it comes to an interview process. Because if you've never talked to a professional your whole college career, and then you sit down in an interview, you've really had no practice at doing it. So I think those are some of the mistakes that students make. when they're on the college campus.
Absolutely. I don't know where it comes from. I know when I was actually deciding on what major, it was a networking thing. I met with my pastor and he said, "Oh, do accounting because you'll always have a job or something." It was an unintentional network moment of a recommendation. And that's why I chose it. And I think a lot of people do that for their major, their career. They're listening to a recommendation from someone else, which can be really helpful in directing, but then you get there and you might not like it. And so I think there's some pressure, right, from parents or friends or whatever, what you've said, right? "Oh, I've said I'm going to be a lawyer for forever. And so, well, I've said it, so I've got to do it." And I think you got to take some pressure off and just really think about why you're doing what you're doing. And if you can figure out a why, like Simon Sinek talks about in all of his books, the how and the what's going to materialize, right? If your why is to help college students like myself, right? Then, okay, podcast, sure. That seems like a how. Writing a book, that seems like a how, right? For you, right? Wanting to help people find their careers, right? Books, podcasts, speaking, right? Because there's these moments where you can change someone's trajectory, right? When they hear you, or there's this idea that they never thought of. And that's sort of this whole idea behind the knowledge gap too, right? People just don't know what they don't know. And once you realize you don't know what you don't know, you can start becoming more curious. The most dangerous mistake college students make is they think they know it all. And this right here is your problem, right? If you think you know it all, you're going to struggle. And I'm telling you because I care, you're going to struggle. So you have to realize you have this huge knowledge gap and to start asking questions and being humble about it and seeking out information, because there's so many ways to do things. You don't always have to do it the way that you've been taught to or what you think is possible, because what you think is possible is usually some sort of small box compared to reality of what really is.
Very well said. I couldn't agree more than what you just said there, because I was like that. Nobody was going to tell me any different when I went to college. I knew how to network. That's common sense stuff. I know how to job interview. I'm good at it. Well, I never done it, but I'm good at it. So I had the typical reaction just like everybody else. So I can really relate to college students in that way, is that nobody could tell me anything different when I was in school. And then, to be honest with you, I had to pay for it a little bit coming out, because one of my stories is it took me over 250 job interviews with 50 companies before I landed my very first opportunity in pharmaceutical sales. Imagine if I would have listened to a couple of folks. I could have really taken time off that. I could really take a lot of energy, a lot of money. And so you're exactly spot on.
Absolutely. So what would you say would be your top 3 tips? So you're a college student, maybe you're freshman, sophomore, junior, somewhere in that range. What are the best things that you can be doing today, tomorrow, this semester, to be networking, to set yourself up for the most options possible?
3 most important things. You mentioned it the first. College professors. Talk to them after class. Someone like you that shows up with a smile on their face, you're hungry to learn a little bit more. Ask them a couple of questions about the course, and then talk to them about careers. Let them know, look, I don't really know what I want to do, or I do want to know what I want to do. Here's why. College professors, if they've been on the campus a long time, think about all the students they've taught, they've networked with. They know alumni in positions that you may want. You may want to work at Google. You may work at IBM. Those professors have seen other students and alumni be successful in their classes. They were you before coming up, asking them, showing up with a smile on their face. They can a lot of times network that back once they trust you and gain that trust. Hey, you should talk to Zach. He's doing something similar. He's on LinkedIn. Tell him I went ahead and recommended him. They're the most underutilized assets on campus. Number 2, LinkedIn. I don't care if you're a freshman or you're a senior in high school, and I really mean this. You should have a LinkedIn profile. It should be done professionally. What LinkedIn does, it's not going to get you a job on its own. You have to actually spend time on it, just like you do Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. Spend time on it. It's a great way to organize all these contacts that you come across with. If you met Jeff, if you met somebody through a restaurant, if you met a previous hire manager, it's a way to network with recruiters and everybody. Build a strong LinkedIn account, show up with activity, be positive on there, wanting to learn. You don't want to comment on political stuff or religion or anything like that it can deter you. But if you really go on there and really just see it as a professional site, that's really what it's for. Number 3, go to the Career Services Center, even if you're a freshman, sophomore, or junior. Why? They will help you resume build. They will help you mock interview, which you get in front of a video camera. You learn how to communicate with somebody at a really young age. And if you build network works inside a career service center, number one, they're going to be able to help you find some of your strengths if you're really struggling with what kind of major you want to do, what you want to do in life. And guess where hiring managers all go when they come to college? They go right there to that building, that career services building. So if you're in there networking and Joe's been there since a freshman, he's coming in, he's showing me things, you're going to get offers from companies that you may never even thought of, because all that takes is that recommendation. Hey, Joe's been here since a freshman. He's worked hard. He's got great work ethic, great student. I would recommend him. Boom, you're in the hiring manager seat and have a chance to get that job. Those are the three best networking tips for college students.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think, if we go deeper into the lesson of sort of just like the character and understanding why people don't do this, I think this is an important thing to explore. I'm curious of your thoughts on here. What do you think the biggest reason is people don't do this?
For the career service center, I think the number one, even when I tell people, most people don't do it. It takes work. It takes effort. And if you don't like to communicate, it's kind of can be hard. I've even heard from students, I completely understand, that might be an introvert. So it's hard for them to just walk into a career service center and say, hey, can you do for me? It kind of can seem kind of nerve wracking. I think effort is a lot. You actually have to schedule time and go and be consistent about it. And I think another thing is when we get in our habits as students, it's hard to get out of them. For me, people told me to do that, and I never did, because I was like, well, I'd rather go to lunch or play video games or go play basketball or something else. And all this, the college experience comes in the way of you wanting to have fun and everything like that, but you also forget that there's an effort and component involved. So I would say those are the two biggest reasons.
Absolutely. I think the lesson there is action cures fear. If you just go do it, it won't scare you anymore. And the worst case scenario is you mess up, and guess what? You're not dead and you're okay. And in fact, you'll be like, this is what I should do better next time. So that's going to build your confidence. I think the overarching theme of this episode is that interdependence is better than independence, right? So there's three types of dependence. You have dependence, right? You have independence, and then you have interdependence, right? So if you're dependent, I think a lot of college students struggle on this. They're dependent on their parents, so therefore they don't go the extra mile. Big problem. Do not be dependent on your parents when you're in school. When you're 18 plus, you need to learn to be independent, right? That's the next step. And then I think a lot of people get stuck there. They stay there their whole lives. They stay independent or dependent their whole lives, right? Independence is I do everything by myself. I can do anything I put my mind to. And that often is a huge waste of time, because if you're interdependent, this means you're relying on other people, right? And you're, networking. There's going to be people who are better at things than you. They are going to be better at whatever it is. And actually surrounding yourself with these people helps you 10x, your efficiency, what you're capable of doing, because no person that you've ever seen on YouTube, on TikTok, on social media, who's ever written a good book, who's become president, who's done anything, has ever done it by themselves. And you've got to get over the pride and the egotism of independence to become interdependent and realize and ask for help. I think that's hard for people. So be interdependent. Learn how to do that. Learn that doing it all by yourself, which is what I used to do all the time, bash my head against the wall, try to do everything myself, get real stressed out, do all the work by myself, feel like I have to do it. Don't miss these opportunities, because I was definitely not the person who did the career center at my college. I was lucky enough to do this internship, where I met all these really cool people, and it kind of fell into my lap, which is really, really rare that I had a mentor and somebody that wanted to invest in me and teach me all of those things. So definitely get out there, do what Zach's talking about, get to your career center, go talk to your professors, start networking now, because you won't realize how big of a deal it's going to be 5-10 years from now. And Zach is a perfect example of 5 years of me doing the extra mile with him while I was in school and thinking, what would be a great person that helped me in college? And I think of him. And so it helps him too, because we're going to put his links for his books in the description, and you guys should go click those, because that supports this channel. That supports Zach to keep doing what he's doing. And it will help you, because his book, The Hot Seat, will literally help you interview better than anyone else in college, because he's got a little part in there where you bring a portfolio. And if this is all you got from his book, if you went in, you brought a portfolio of everything that you've ever done, proven certificates, right? And you slap it on the desk, and they're like, what's that? Because everyone else is just coming in with their little resume, right? If you come in and say, oh, this is just all the stuff I've done. Come on, it's interesting. They're going to talk about that. What was in there? What was different? Tell me about about that. And now you're in the driver's seat of the conversation, and they're asking about you and the best things about you instead of these canned questions, for example. So that's in that book. So you should read that. I've not read the new one, but How Not to Be a Zombie. That is also going to be in there. So check that out. As always, somebody who wants to perform better in life. I just saw Joe Rogan little video about how, he's stayed at tip-top condition health-wise, and it's helped him to do lots and lots of things. If you're somebody like that, check out Elevate Wellness. Get started at elevatewellness.fit. That's my company with my friends. It's pretty awesome. We're growing. As always, just go ahead and like and subscribe and comment below if this was helpful to you and how it helped you. I love to interact with you guys. I want to hear about all of the cool stuff that you're doing from this. And I'd love to hear about how you networked or how you all these cool stories of how you've been successful from this and what you're doing. And, if you just enjoyed this, let me know so we can keep making content like this and getting you connected to really awesome people like Zack. So Zack, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you.
I love it. Thanks. Continue to do what you're doing, and you're really helping a lot of students out there. So I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.